Welcome to Resume Well. We're exposing the intersection of wellness, woo, and work. We've been told that the antidote to professional burnout is personal wellness, and sometimes that means confronting our inner skeptic and exploring the taboo anyway. This season, we're all about putting our intuition to work at work. Welcome to today's episode. We are going to explore the art and science of physical therapy today. Joining us is a very special guest, Daniel Komfortii from New Horizons Physical Therapy. Founded in 2022, New Horizons has quickly become a beacon of excellence in Central Florida. Daniel's practice is dedicated to delivering top-notch patient care in a welcoming environment, crafting personalized recovery plans that recognize the unique needs of each individual. His approach goes beyond traditional methods, focusing on guiding patients through every single stage of their recovery journey, helping them not just achieve, but exceed their health goals. I love that. Today, we're going to look at his mission. We're going to learn all about it and how he is very dedicated to educating and inspiring the community about the transformative power of physical therapy and how he helps individuals move beyond their pain to live active and fulfilling lives. So settle in as we uncover how he is personalizing care with an understanding approach that truly changes lives right here on our show. Daniel, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Courtney.
So I like to start off by asking everybody, if you were at a dinner party and somebody asked you, what do you do? How would you respond?
I help active adults change their narrative by, facilitating exercise and changes in lifestyle and just kind of becoming more independent and fulfilled in their day-to-day activities.
Okay, so lots to break down there. First of all, how do people normally respond to that when you give them that answer?
They usually ask, what do you mean by change narrative?
Yeah. What do you mean?
A lot of people, their story goes about and they have an injury one day and then, it's 10 years later and they've just ignored it. And they kind of learn to live with it. It becomes less of a pain, more of an awareness. And, they squeak by, they're still doing their activities. They're still, spending time with their family, but they still have these underlying things in the background that bother them on a daily basis. And maybe they are, unable to be as active as they want to. Maybe they've put on weight because of that. Maybe they are, feeling isolated from their friend group because of that. So I think that regaining your physical self and your strength kind of has carryover to other parts of your life. So, just your narrative as a whole, not just your physical narrative.
Yeah. And just to kind of piggyback on that, I know just from my own personal experience, if I have anything that's just even slightly irritating, it affects my mood. I mean, I'm maybe a little bit more irritable, a little bit less likely to want to go out and have fun or just want to talk to people. So it has a huge impact, our physical wellness. So what did you want to be when you were a kid?
So I actually went to college originally to study music. I went to UCF to study jazz performance originally. I did that for a year. And then
Wow.
then completely switched and, started taking more science-based classes and was on track to go to medical school, but wasn't wholeheartedly committed to spending both the time and the money that it takes to become a physician. So I kind of took a step back, reevaluated what other options are available in healthcare. And I was obviously passionate about exercise and nutrition back then, just like I am now. And it kind of lined up with what physical therapy has to offer. And then the other part of it, obviously, the amount of time you get to spend with a physical therapist versus, most physicians these days. I thought that was pretty unique to the profession. Obviously, that was in college. I know you asked me what I wanted to be back when I was younger. So, I would say from middle school to through high school, I wanted to be a musician.
Okay, cool. What instrument did you play?
I play bass.
Okay. Do you still play?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I haven't picked up the bass in a couple of months.
Okay. Oh, months. That's not bad. My
Yeah.
husband has a bass in this closet right next to me that he hasn't touched since we met 10 years ago. So I don't.
Okay.
So that's better. a couple months. But that's cool. And I think it's very interesting. I have a lot of friends and just know people in general who are musicians and then kind of transition into something that is either computer sciencey or like actual like biological science. And there has to be some kind of connection there. I don't know if that's something that you would want to speak to.
Yeah, I've never heard of that connection before. Yeah, no, it's the
No.
first I'm hearing of it, honestly.
Really?
So I
Yeah.
can't speak to it now.
Yeah, no, I have a couple family members and a couple friends who are all musicians, either drummers or pianists or composers, and they're all doing stuff that's either in the biological sciences or computer sciences. And I
Okay.
just think it's like a really interesting, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the connection is. So anyway, that is something. Maybe you should look into that. But that's really interesting. So what was the catalyst in transitioning from music to science?
Yeah. So obviously went to college for the first year and did jazz performance, was majoring in music, taking mostly music classes. And just because of that, you have to be on your instrument pretty much at all waking hours, just practicing.
Mm.
And I kind of started to despise playing, and I didn't want to lose that as a hobby. So I decided I'd rather cut my losses and, find something where there's a little bit more security as far as, job security later on when I graduate. Obviously with music, it's kind of, you have to be the one off to really be successful. Otherwise, it's you could be a struggling artist, definitely.
Hmm.
So job security was definitely important to me. And I'd always been good at science. I was like, I'll just try to study what I was, excelling at in high school. And I had family members who were in healthcare already, and just, looking up to them and, their successes, just kind of motivated me to explore the options of going to medical school.
Hmm. And where did the awareness come from in regards to not going down the whole physician path? So at some point, like you had mentioned, at some point you were like, I'm not that committed. I mean, that's a long time in school, which is totally understandable. Financially, it's a burden. But I'm just wondering, like, was there a moment where you were like, this is just not vibing with me anymore? Or like how did that decision come to light?
Yeah, so I had applied for medical school 2 cycles in a row, so summer after summer, and I honestly didn't want to do it again. I only got accepted to an out-of-state school, and tuition would obviously be 2+ times more expensive than going in-state somewhere in Florida. And like I said, I wasn't like I knew that I should be 110% like in my heart know that I want to do this if I'm going to commit. Not only 4 years because obviously there's residency and fellowship after that, and then also just the financial commitment of medical school versus cheaper options in healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
So I, even though I was younger at that time, I'm glad I made a decision and was smart about, figuring out something that made sense for my future rather than just being like, this, I'm dead set on this goal of going to medical school. I'm going to study for the exams again and reapply. I
Mm-hmm.
think that I made the right decision at that point.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just really great to hear as a young person being able to kind of connect to that intuitive voice and understand like goals are great, but they can also be kind of flexible and you can find something that's still underneath that like umbrella, right? Because you're not that far removed from, physician and from the medical like world. So what drove you to PT specifically? And if you don't
Yeah.
mind, for people who are like not entirely, I think we've all heard of physical therapy, but like we might have heard of physical therapy or occupational therapy or, different types of bodily therapies. So, what is, for anyone who's like very curious, what is physical therapy?
To sum it up in one sentence, like we help people improve their quality of life. That can be through exercise, that can be through just becoming more mindful about how you're moving throughout your day, changing habits, building routines where they are just incorporating some kind of movement throughout their day. It really
Mhm.
depends on the person's goals, but obviously at the end of the day, we're really focusing on improving that person's quality of life and getting them back to whatever activities they love that they are not able to participate in at all or not able to participate in comfortably at the current time.
Okay. And why did you decide on physical therapy and not something else within the, medical umbrella or under the
Yeah.
medical umbrella?
Yeah. So after I had reapplied to medical school the second time around and only got accepted out of state, I kind of decided I'm going to go find out what all my options are. So I, made appointments to shadow healthcare providers in every realm. So I did everything from like a dentist, orthodontist, veterinarian, pharmacist, podiatrist. I mean, literally everything, chiropractors. And, far and few between who are able to spend as much time that a physical therapist spends with their patients.
Mm.
Like in the insurance-based world of physical therapy, usually like patients are spending 2 to 3 hours a week with the physical therapist. So you really get to form a unique bond with the therapist and, build that alliance. And that's not something I saw physicians doing.
Hmm.
Most physicians, you're lucky if they're in the room with you for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I just like the aspect of, building the relationship. And um, I think it's easier to set expectations with somebody and to get them to trust you when you're around them for objectively more time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think we've all been in that, in the doctor's office and, you wait for like an hour and then you see them for 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think just, yeah, the sheer like length of time with somebody, of course, you're gonna just feel more comfortable with them and more trusting. And it's a great foundation for any relationship, especially one where you're working on, you know, towards a goal together. So I think that's really interesting. What do you, or who in your practice anyway, you mentioned adults at the beginning of the show. So who comes to see you? Who goes to PT? Why would somebody go to PT? Is it just adults or
Yeah.
do kids go too?
Yeah. So, I mean, physical therapy is not just orthopedic conditions. It's not just you break a bone, sprain a ligament, and then, you have physical therapy. There's neurologic physical therapy, there's pediatric physical therapy, there's pelvic floor, there's like geriatric specific physical therapy, oncology. So there's different realms of physical therapy. I'd say I practice more in like the orthopedic performance space.
Hmm.
So, and my ideal client is somewhere between the ages of 30 to 60 years old, more active. I don't mean like a professional athlete. It can be someone who's recreational or almost just a weekend warrior. But, they enjoy, moving their body and taking care of themselves and breaking a sweat. And they have an injury, or whether that be acute, it just happened, or something they've just, like I said earlier, been ignoring for years on end.
Hmm.
And, they're sick and tired of it, or they've tried other approaches. They've tried maybe traditional physical therapy. They've tried the orthopedic doctor route. And maybe they got some temporary relief for those things, but the issue, slowly creeps back in, and, they don't have a long-term solution, and also they don't necessarily understand like what's going on, like what's the root cause of this all. And it's not promoting the independence within themselves to proactively take care of it. So I think there's a
Mm.
lot of power in understanding why these things are happening in the first place, rather than just someone telling you, do this, this, and this, and you're going to get better.
Yeah, of course. Like that frame of reference helps you I mean, just understand yourself and your body and why you do the things you do, right?
Yeah.
Um, do you find that people usually come in because of acute injuries or more the long-term ignoring one?
So since I am a cash practice, I do see mostly people that have had injuries for a while.
Okay.
Because a lot of times with an acute injury, first people's instinct is to, go to the orthopedic doctor or go to the urgent care. And when they're kind of in that system, they're going to be referred in-house to the larger hospital systems or the, big chain physical therapy clinics. So it's more so people that have been down that route and it just wasn't the right fit for them.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I do get some acute, but I would say it's probably like a 75% chronic, 25% acute.
Okay. Okay. And what are the most common ailments that come in?
Yeah, definitely low back pain is number one. Then
That would have been
probably
my guess.
yeah, everyone
Yeah.
has low back pain if you've asked them enough times.
Yeah.
And then I would say knee pain and shoulder pain.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's take, I'm going to put you on the spot. Let's take lower back pain. What is like the number one or like the first thing that you would ask somebody who comes in for lower back pain?
The first question I asked them,
Yeah. About
yeah,
the lower back pain.
I asked them how long has it been going on for.
And what do people normally say? Like a long time?
Most people say years.
Really?
Yeah,
Years?
most people, yeah.
Wow.
I
So
had an
what?
evaluation this morning and she said 30 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Really? So why after 30 years all of a sudden come in? Like what is like the straw that breaks the camel's back there? Like why not just
That's a
keep
question.
going? It's been 30 years, you know?
That's a question I ask as well. Like, what changed? Like, what
Yeah,
prompted you to set up this appointment and drive to see me today?
right.
Yeah. And asking those deeper questions really gets people thinking
What
because
did they
something
say?
obviously
What
changed.
did she say?
What, well, she's kind of a friend also.
Okay.
So she knows what I'm doing. She's seen the results of other people I've worked with. So she's kind of finally got her butt in the office and had a session with me.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's plenty of people that are strangers that give me that answer, and sometimes it's like, oh, my spouse has been getting on me about it, and
Okay.
or
Oh.
like or people are getting they get older and they're like, I'm getting older, things aren't changing, I'm not able to keep up with my grandkids like I used to.
Mm.
Um,
I was waiting for
so
that one. Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I mean, there's always some spark that ignites them to seek care. But a lot of times it's hard because a lot of these people have tried things in the past, especially for something that's been going on for 30 years.
Hmm.
And when you try, other conservative measures and those either fail or they give you temporary relief, it gets discouraging. And you just kind of get in your head like, I'm going to have to live with this forever. And those beliefs are extremely hard to, break down. But that's part of my role as a physical therapist is kind of understand their belief system and figure, because it's not just the physical. I mean, for chronic pain, like for instance, if someone has back pain, and it's been going on for 30 years, and they're convinced that the herniation at L4 is the cause of their back pain,
Hmm.
I have to kind of explain to them that our body does a miraculous job at healing. Like, it's not a herniation from 30 years ago that's causing your back pain. I'm sorry to break to you. And I'm sorry if one of your doctors told you have the back of a 90-year-old, because that's just not true. Our body's way more resilient than that. And we don't give it
Mm.
enough credit. And, it's chronic pain is complicated. It's not just a physical issue. It's like they say, like the issue is not in the tissue. It's,
Ooh, I
it's that
like that.
yeah, your central nervous system is just sensitized. Like you've been going through it for so long that those neural pathways are they're strengthened. Like your body's getting better at something. It's getting better at producing that pain just because it's been going
Wow.
on for so damn long. Yeah.
Whoa. Yeah. And so the reason I was interested in the what that catalyst is for coming in, and it sounds like, my instinct might have been a little correct. It's usually an emotional reason, like wanting to pick up your grandkids or like your spouse is worried about you. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily the physical pain that ends up bringing them to your office. It's something attached to love or like a very deep emotion.
And a lot of people don't even realize that. Like I have to ask the deep, like I do this stuff on my discovery like calls, like in the consultation calls.
Mm,
Like I'll try to find that deeper level of why, because obviously people seek out physical therapy because they're in pain, but
mm,
it's asking them like, well, what's that pain preventing you from doing? And sometimes they have a straightforward answer and makes the conversation easier, but sometimes they're like, no, I'm fine. Like, everything's fine. I just have back pain. It's
mm.
like, I have to ask more questions. And eventually they'll tell me some activity that, they used to be able to do that they're not able to do anymore, but they kind of given up on ever being able to do it again. And then I'll
Yeah.
ask them like, why is getting back to that activity important? And then I'll ask them like, what's that risk if you don't get back to that activity? What
Hmm.
other areas of your life do you think this will start to affect? It's kind of like just peeling the onion
Hmm.
and, being able to use that to show them that there is possibility to get back to those things. I have worked with many people like you and helped them get back to those things and even higher level goals. But your mindset about it has to shift. I can be the best strength coach, exercise prescription, physical therapist in the world. I can have the hands of God and be able to, use manual therapy to heal you. But it doesn't matter if your belief system is, broken down.
Yeah. Mic drop. Yeah. I mean, you're kind of like a mindset coach and physical therapist. Like, and I mean, they kind of go hand in hand, right?
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
basically what you're
education
saying.
is education before exercise, honestly.
Yeah.
Because if someone's just going about their day the same old way and not making any changes to the load they're putting, the physical stressor and load, both mentally and physically, on their body throughout their day, it may take way longer to actually have the body adapt, or it may never happen.
Mm.
So, I mean, it's education is huge for sure.
Yeah. So what is the client journey like? I mean, do you obviously it's tailored to each client because everyone's body is different and that's part of your, I know just from doing some research on you, that's very important to you is like approaching everybody as their own person. But do you have some kind of, framework that you work with for
Yeah.
just as a whole? Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I have a three-phase process, and obviously, it's tailored, but I mean, generally speaking, so it's called reset, restore, reload. So, like I said, most people come to physical therapy because they're in pain. So in that reset phase, we're really doing all we can to kind of decrease their symptoms, get their pain better controlled, and that can be through, any kind of hands-on therapy. So as a physical therapist, like yes, I prescribe exercise, but I also use my hands a lot. So I do manual therapy, which involves, mobilizations, manipulations, which is like what chiropractors do, adjustments. A lot of people don't know physical therapists can crack bones and crack joints, but we can.
Mm,
I do dry needling, which is similar to acupuncture, but different.
hmm
Different sports massage, myofascial work. So anything I can do to kind of decrease their pain to get it, just tone it down so they can participate in rehab more comfortably in the following weeks and do their home stuff more comfortably. So once things are better controlled, moving into the next phase, which is the restore phase, which is when we're starting to, advance the exercise program, really focusing on building strength, improving mobility. And that's not just in the area that they came in for, but it's finding that root cause. Like, for instance, the lady that came in today for low back pain, like I was assessing her ankle mobility and she asked me like, why are you looking at my ankles? I'm here for low back pain. I was like, a lot of times I find a deficit in one ankle versus the other, and that can contribute to low back pain. I mean, obviously in an ideal world, we're all symmetrical, but I like to screen from, top down and make sure,
hmm
we're not missing anything. Um, so, I've had people where, when I was a younger clinician, I've only been working for 4 years as a therapist. So I say younger as in like just a couple of years ago, where I would miss these things that are just like glaring me in the face now,
Mm,
just because I've done more coursework and just have more volume underneath my belt. But like just because someone has low back pain doesn't mean the low back is the issue. Like you have to look further down the chain: the hips, knees, ankles, everything works together, both fortunately and unfortunately. So really getting the whole picture. So finding that root cause and both strengthening and improving mobility in the primary area, but also like that secondary area that may be contributing to it. And then moving into the last stage, which is the reload phase, where we're really focusing on getting the person back to the activities that they love. And this is the most fun part for me because really getting to understand how they move in their sport, in their hobby, whatever they like doing, getting them back to that. But not only getting them back to that, but like monitoring them while they're doing it. And
hmm
I don't mean like on the court watching them, but like, they're back to playing for a couple of months before we're actually like done working together. And I'm not seeing them once a week at this point. Like I'm seeing them maybe once a month, once every 2 months. But I can, by being a cash physical therapist and not being like tied down to the restrictions of insurance, I can dwindle someone's plan of care down to the point where I'm seeing them and weaning them down to only a couple of visits here and there.
hmm
And I think it's important because I still want to be in their corner while they're slowly ramping up and doing something that they haven't done in years. I think
Yeah.
it's important so they don't have a flare up. And if they have questions or if another injury pops up and we have to address it, I'm still in their corner and they still have access to me. So in that reload phase, we're really focusing on those activities and just making sure that they have the tools in their arsenal that after physical therapy, they know what to do if something pops up again.
hmm Yeah. Do you find that between any of those, so between the reset and the restore, or between the restore and the reload, that people I like drift off? Because I'm just thinking of, I'm not going to say who it is. Actually, I'm going to call him out, my dad. Okay. It's like, I feel like if my dad and he went through like the reset, he'd be like, I think I'm good now, and maybe like veer off and try to, just resume as he was.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dad. But is that something that happens, or are people pretty dialed in?
Oh no, it definitely happens. And like, it's my job to kind of future frame things and set expectations and tell people like, in a couple of visits, you're going to be feeling better, but don't think the work is done yet. Like we're just getting started. Like this didn't happen overnight. It's not going to go away overnight. It's not something that's going to go away in a couple of weeks. It's going to, take a couple of months of some rigorous work to really make sure this thing is, you know, one thing I like to tell people is there's a big difference between getting out of pain and staying out of pain.
Ooh, you have
Yeah.
some nice catchphrases. I like it.
And like that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's
That
so
makes sense, right?
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, I would imagine that, and knock on wood, I'm lucky that I've not had any massive like physical accident or anything that I've needed physical therapy. But I have some friends who were pretty intense athletes growing up, like gymnasts and stuff, and they were in and out of physical therapy. And I would imagine that being in chronic pain for a long time, that's kind of your normal, and finding that relief must feel like almost euphoric, and it would probably feel very freeing. So I could see why people would be like, no, like this is great, I'm good, we don't have to do the whole thing, like you are great, like you fixed me, and they'll go off before the whole before you finish through the whole phase, the third phase. But I mean, I could see why, like people would be like,
Yeah.
no, that's cool. I feel you did your
People
job. Like,
people people love band-aids. They love short-term relief,
yeah,
and they love spending the least amount of money as possible on healthcare. Unfortunately,
yeah,
um, not all people, but it's majority of the community. Definitely, it's tough to convince them to pay out of pocket for something that they think their insurance will cover, even though what I provide is different than what an insurance-based clinic will do. But yeah, and it's all about it's like future framing and just kind of setting expectations and explaining this three-step process to them, having this conversation. But you know, the first few weeks are going to be like this. You're going to get a decrease in pain. We can celebrate a little, but we can't celebrate for too long. We
hmm
have to keep moving.
yeah,
You have this goal. Sometimes there is a timeline involved, like they have a marathon coming up or something. Like you
mm,
have this goal, and in order to get to that, we need to go through this whole process. Like, this is my recommendation. When we decided to work together, you trusted me. I trusted you that you'd commit to this.
mm,
It's the partnership.
yeah,
But
yeah.
there's still people that drop off. There's nothing I can do.
No, I
It
think
happens.
that's true with, I mean, that's true with any business. But I think it's unique with physical therapy because there is that it's emotional and physical, right? So it's not just an intellectual, whatever. I can't think of like one off the top of my head, but if you're in some other kind of, partnership in business, it kind of, I understand why people would be like, oh no, it's okay. I'm going to like go off and do my own thing. Like I'm not interested in XYZ anymore. Whereas with physical therapy, there's like this physical aspect and this emotional aspect that's really hard to meld together and to have them see like, yes, you feel really good and you're having this like great emotional state now, but like physically it's not there yet. And having to like explain that to somebody who's not in, any kind of physical science or anything like that, or, in the medical field, I feel like that would just be really difficult.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. It's definitely
You're thinking about this morning, like, yeah, it was really
yeah, I mean, there's definitely a learning curve to it all.
yeah.
Like when I was practicing at an in-network clinic, like, I wasn't having these conversations. One, I didn't have the time to have these conversations, and it just wasn't what I was surrounded by. Like no one else was having these
Doing that.
deeper level conversations. We weren't prompted to, but obviously being a practice owner and being able to help people at a higher level now because I can run my business the way I want to, I find it's only appropriate to really get to know like what makes this person tick.
hmm Yeah. Yeah. So, how has not only are you a physical therapist, but you are also an entrepreneur and business owner. So, how is that? How has that been going? What were, obviously, I think just from listening to you, I think insurance might have been a big part of that. It can be restrictive in your practice. So, I would imagine that that is one reason that you decided to go off on your own. But tell us about that. Tell us about that decision. Tell us about what it's like as a physical therapist and entrepreneur.
Yeah, for sure. So I graduated from PT school in 2020 during, the thick of COVID. Didn't get my dream job immediately, but eventually ended up at a really good orthopedic clinic. Learned a lot, really good mentors over there. But 2.5 years down the road, I was just starting to feel a little burnt out. And it's just because it's high volume. It's just a hamster wheel, It's like you're looking forward to Friday, and then you get to Sunday scaries, and then it's Monday again, and it's just on and on and on and on. But even more so is just being surrounded by other coworkers who are just so burnt out and have
Mm,
no interest in being at the clinic. Um,
yeah.
and I was the youngest clinician there, and I really did not want that to rub off on me. So I was actually working for a large hospital corporation. I applied for a promotion um, to go help open one of their clinics, and literally that same evening, a light bulb went off in my head. Like, when I was in PT school, I wanted to start a cash practice. I wanted to be a business owner. Why am I chasing this other goal down of trying to climb this corporate ladder? So that same evening, no kidding, I literally applied for business coaching. Um, and since then, I slowly decreased my hours at the in-network clinic and built up my thing as a side hustle, grinding on evenings, weekends, eventually build up my caseload enough where I was able to go full time into my practice. But I just feel like when I was in network, we weren't able to help people to our true capacity. Like physical therapists have the skills to see people through that whole continuum where they are injured, laid up in bed, not able to work, to, playing competitive tennis, playing competitive pickleball. But in the insurance-based world, they only care about, getting someone out of pain and making sure they can go about their day to day without pain.
Yeah.
There's no accountability long term. There's no, following people for a couple months longer to make sure that they are back to their sport, both without pain and understand how to stay out of pain in the long run.
Hmm.
Insurance doesn't care about that stuff. So I just felt like I was failing a lot of people. And, a lot of people would end up as just frequent flyers back in the clinic. Like, they'd
Yeah.
just end up back in the clinic with the same injury over and over again. So it was just frustrating. But I would say the biggest thing was just being surrounded by coworkers that didn't want to be there. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know if you can speak to a similar situation, like being in a toxic work environment. It's a certain type of hell.
Oh, for sure. I read about this all the time, and my clients, that's something that comes up all the time, and it has such an incredible influence on your mental state. And one of the main reason people will stay in a job is because of their coworkers. So
Mhm.
think about that in the opposite way. One of the main reasons people will leave a job is either because of a horrible boss or because of exactly what you just said. And also there's pay and all of that stuff. But it's usually more the emotional aspect of it than it is, you could be paid really, really well. But if you're going in there and again, like you said, like you're just burnt out, surrounded by all of this, negative energy, it's just like a recipe for depression and anxiety. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
sure all of those things then lead into your physical wellness, right? And so it's like,
I had my first panic attack at this job.
yeah.
Literally.
Oh, wow. Do you mind?
Yeah.
Can you talk to that? Can you speak to that a
Yeah,
little bit if
yeah,
you're
of
comfortable?
course,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, it was back in January 2021. So when I started working for the company, I was employed by one staffing company, and then eventually there was a transition, and then I started becoming an employee of the hospital. So when that transition happened, they switched electronic medical record systems they were using. We
Okay.
went from using paper to using this pretty complex and robust EMR, and it was super stressful for everybody. And I just remember one day, like my chest just like filled up, and like just everything just felt really weird, something I'd never felt before, and ended up going to the hospital. And just from that day on, just every morning, just anxious about the thought of having another anxiety attack or panic attack. Yeah, I got on anxiety medication from because of this job.
Because of that. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. Wow. That is not unusual though. I mean,
yeah, definitely not.
yeah, there have been people that have some kind of, whether it's a panic attack or just general anxiety that is induced from from their job. And it's usually because of the environment as opposed to, the actual, like you're still a physical therapist. It's not like you made a major career pivot. It's just a different environment. So, I
Right,
mean, I think that's very, very I just think that's a really important lesson. Like, if anybody gets anything out of this episode, like that, I think is really important because people end up thinking, like, I think I'm in the wrong career. And a lot of the time, it's like you might not be. It might just be like the place. And an analogy for that just came to mind when I moved down to Florida, I was like, oh my God, I hate Florida. Like it's so like hot and blah because I'm from up north. And my stepmom, to her credit, she was like, maybe it's just the neighborhood you're in. I'm like, no, it's all of Florida. It is the entire state of Florida. And we moved into a different neighborhood that I like a lot more. And I was like, oh, it's like nice down here. So it could really just be like the environment that you're in every day. It has such an impact on you, but it doesn't mean that you have to totally pivot and change everything. It could just
right,
be
right.
that. Yeah.
And
So I think
it may always seem like the grass is always greener, and it's always fun to chase that dangling carrot and think like, I'm not
the
meant for this. There's
FOMO.
something else.
Yeah.
There's something else. I'm like, there's something better for me. But you really have to give yourself the space and opportunity to explore other options in your industry. And this isn't just for healthcare, because you can become an entrepreneur in many different fields.
Yeah.
Not everyone's bred for it. I had no idea I would love it as much as I do until I started doing it. But
Hmm.
I mean, I love running a business. I love building relationships within my community. But on the other end of the spectrum, like I didn't know what I didn't know. There was no way for me to know that being able to show up more authentically in my profession, just serve people at a higher level would be fulfilling and I could still be a physical therapist. But it
Hmm.
was either go back to school and do something else or try to become an entrepreneur and do it on my own. And
Hmm.
I have student loans and responsibilities, so I decided to give it a run. And I don't have any regrets for sure. I mean, everyone who told me like they wish they started sooner, I took that advice, and I was only 2.5 years out of school at that point. But I was
Hmm.
like, what am I waiting for? Like, if this is something that I thought about when I was in school, and it's still an appetizing goal for me, like there's always going to be like room for growth as a clinician. The continuing education courses are always going to be available. But,
Hmm.
10 years down the line, I don't want to be, kicking myself in the butt saying I should have started my business 10 years ago.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to start, right? Like
Yeah.
that's, yeah. What has been like the most difficult aspect of entrepreneurship for you?
Um, Being addicted to it.
Oh, yeah. Are you going to open something else? What are your future goals? Let's talk
No,
about
no,
that.
I'm at my future goals for sure. Like I definitely want to, step aside from the like clinician, wearing the clinician hat, and I do want to just like operate and run the business.
Hmm.
And definitely like have a space, maybe multiple spaces, grow a culture. Um, but I was saying more so just being a workaholic. That's the
I see.
biggest,
Okay.
that's
Okay.
that's the toughest
I
part,
get it. Okay.
the
Yeah.
unhealthy addiction part of it.
But I think as an entrepreneur, that's not a bad thing to have because you have to wear all the hats, right? So if
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
kind of if you're that's a good sign that you're interested in it and you love it and that you want to do it, you know. I did want to ask you, you know, you mentioned a business coach. What was the most enlightening aspect of going into business coaching? If there was one
Um,
or two
yeah, I
things.
mean, I've worked with 4 different programs at this point.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Because you like them or because you were feeling like you weren't getting much out of them?
A little bit of both, probably more so just not the right fit.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, just like empty promises sometimes.
Hmm. Hmm.
But let's see. So what's the most valuable thing? Just teaching me to how to better express my worth and value to both referral partners and to potential clients.
Hmm.
Because as a physical therapist in school, we learn how to serve others, but we don't learn how to serve ourselves.
Mm.
So, I mean, so many physical therapists come out of school with imposter syndrome and thinking that like they can't really help people. Like
Mm.
I'm just a physical therapist, but we have the ability to change lives. And it's not only through exercise. It's a lot of the time it's through education
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
being,
And then
being a partner.
exercise.
And yeah, yeah, and exercise as well. But like being a partner in their healthcare. I mean, one of my favorite things about, having my own business and running it the way I want is being able to quarterback people's care and like, facilitate relationships with other providers for them.
Mm.
Because obviously as a business owner, I've, build my network in the community and have people I feel comfortable referring to and that feel comfortable referring to me. And, being able to provide quality referrals that are they're going to receive good care at these places. I love that.
Yeah.
And also just being able to have communication with my clients outside of sessions. I think that's super important, especially because I spend an hour, sometimes 2 hours a week with people. So I think it's like, it makes sense that they should have the ability to access me outside of sessions to ask
Hmm.
questions. So being able to provide that like consultative service, through text messages or email, I think it's low hanging fruit because other people in healthcare are not doing it.
Hmm.
And it's something I really enjoy doing. I think it's like one of my superpowers that and I over communicate.
Yeah.
And I think that, my success so far has been built upon that.
Mm.
So yeah, I just love being able to form relationships with referral partners and with my actual clientele.
Yeah, I think that is so true. And I'm just thinking of like with my I have two little kids and for myself as well, but for kids are always at the doctors. Like they're just always at the doctors. So my daughter has eczema and we went through so many dermatologists and then we ended up going to a new pediatrician who referred us to another dermatologist and we really liked this pediatrician. So we trusted this referral a lot more than the other ones. And this is like he's the best dermatologist I've ever had, like for my kids ever. And he does, adults as well. But there was definitely a sense of security before even going there, right? Because I was like, I know this is a trusted, I trust the pediatrician. We've had really good results with them.
Right.
So
Right.
there's no reason that, so I think that's really important when you find any kind of clinician or physician who who you trust that gives you a referral, like there's a lot of security in that. So I think it's really cool that you realize that and that you know, created a community around that. So,
Yeah, I mean, I'm protective of my people. Like, I'm not going to send them somewhere I don't know they're going to get like quality, top-notch
yeah.
care.
Okay, so we're gonna wrap up, but I
Okay.
want to do what I like to call the Fast Five, which is not a very creative name for it, but it is just a rapid fire Fast Five questions, and you can take as much time as you want to answer them. Anyway,
Okay.
number one, favorite lower back pain release method or exercise?
None. Education.
Ah! Favorite sport to either watch or play?
Basketball.
Okay. Favorite jazz artist?
Duke Ellington.
Ooh. Favorite way to start the day?
Coffee.
Nice. And best career advice you've ever received?
Start now.
Oh my God, you're so good at this.
That
I
was
could do
fun.
like 20 more. All right. Daniel, thank you so much. This was awesome. I'm so happy you decided to come on and share your time with us.
Yeah,
If
of course.
you are, you know, we're going to include all of your links and everything. If anyone is interested in reaching out to Daniel for any physical therapy, education, and then exercise, you can find all of that in the show notes. So thank you so much. And we'll see everybody next week.
See you guys.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of Resume Well, where we explore the intersection of wellness, woo, and work. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends, family, and coworkers. Remember to follow us on Instagram at Courtney Austin Page and on LinkedIn either at Courtney Page or at Resume Recruiting and Development. Join us next week, and in the meantime, resume well in everything you do.